Welcome to the C-Suite podcast with me, Graham Barrett. I'm here at Pay360, a fantastic event that has brought the global payments conversation to London. We're producing the show in partnership with BPC, a payments processor that builds digital ecosystems that enable seamless payment experiences. I'm going to be interviewing a number of the speakers and attendees from the event, and I really hope you enjoy the show. Yeah, I'm joined now by Adam Moulson, who is Chief Commercial Officer at Griffin Bank. Adam, how's your Pay360 going?
It's very good, thank you. Nice to see everybody in person and get the buzz from the event. Some interesting things being talked about.
Definitely, there's a real buzz around here today. Now, you are about to speak on a panel around embedded payments, aren't you? So what are some of the key topic areas and some of the key points you're looking to make, I guess, in that session?
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to be speaking shortly on embedded payments. We'll actually be talking a bit more broadly into embedded finance as well. Mm-hmm. There's lots of innovation around payments, the movement of money across the UK, Europe, the world. Mm-hmm. It seems every fintech that's regulated that I look at seems to be able to do card payments and domestic payments and instant payments and all sorts of things. And while payments is really important, the movement of money, the holding of customer funds is really important as well. And also to monetize beyond just payments into deposits and lending is also extremely important for sustainable financial services.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about technology and investing in the kind of technology infrastructure, I guess. How important is that for banks and financial institutions?
Yeah, I've worked in infrastructure technology for 20 odd years in financial services and banking. So
You're well placed to answer that question.
Exactly. I believe that investment in infrastructure and technology around that is critical. We all take for granted now, I think, the movement of money instantly in this country. And when things don't work, even for a few minutes or a few seconds, it not only disappoints people but can cause havoc as well. It's extremely important that technology is invested in, but also the latest technologies and the evolution of infrastructure is something that banks in particular keep ahead of. I think just having plans for improving technology is not good enough anymore. And we're in a world where it's important to stay ahead and keep systems going.
Sure. And if we dig down a little bit more into the specifics, are there some key areas of technology that you think you should be prioritizing to ensure, that seamless customer experience, I guess, that everybody wants?
I mean, if I was to go more into the back-end infrastructure of a bank, it's not only deploying cloud technologies, but being able to have highly resilient failovers. If there are instances of issues, that all of your infrastructure can roll over onto an alternative kind of infrastructure. Some of it might be hybrid, where you're managing that yourself rather than just cloud technologies from a single provider, or deploying technologies across multiple cloud systems. On the front end, it's just the same. So if you've got front end systems where you've got potential issues of failure, it's just planning for that failure and making sure that there are alternative mechanisms that can kick in. And that not only that, when there are issues, that you can communicate effectively with your customers. And the first time they hear about it is not in the national news or newspapers.
Absolutely, and if you look at, obviously not in the payment space, but the problems at Heathrow Airport, backups is something that's been very topical at the moment, isn't it? So
that's been quite interesting. I think the airport obviously not doing particularly well in that particular incident, but also there's now a debate whether they could have had an alternative power supply and it was available, but they decided not to use it. Seems a bit strange to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, back to payments and mobile and digital banking. What do you consider maybe to be the next big leap? What's coming down the track that you see?
I think there's always been a big push for efficiency and making sure systems can be maintained, but also the teams that have to run these systems. So we wouldn't be a conference today where we couldn't talk about artificial intelligence, but I think the application of AI inside large financial institutions or institutions of any size is really important, not just for the efficiency of the operation, but also delivering a good customer service to the end customer. So I think the application of artificial intelligence into financial services businesses will be key. The use cases we will see And the regulators being comfortable with how that's being used, I think, will be important as well.
Given all those points, what then do you see as the priority for Griffin Bank moving forward? Maybe the next 18 months or so. What is key for you? What are you going to prioritise?
Priority for Griffin Bank, well, we built our own core banking system from scratch over the last 4 years. When we became a bank, that was really important to us, that we can maintain those systems and evolve them for our customers. So our absolute focus is delivering value for our customers and making sure that the products and services that we deliver meet their needs, allow them to be competitively differentiated in the marketplace. And so that really comes with delivering new products, new services that don't really exist on the market today. Practically, what can that mean? We do embedded banking services and embedded payments. So we, for example, help non-regulated firms run regulated products, savings products, for example, embedded white label bank accounts, and seamlessly deploy those within their own infrastructures. So that's the priority for us, make our platform as accessible to software engineers and product developers as possible, and build products our customers love.
That should certainly keep you busy, I would suggest.
Yes, definitely.
Adam Moulson, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks very much.
Okay, I'm now here with Melanie Ockerse, who's VP Account Management EMEA at Entersekt. Melanie, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, lovely to see you here at Pay360. Let's start with an intro to Entersekt, if you don't mind.
No, with pleasure. Entersekt is a technology company that helps financial institutions, traditional banks, modern FIs to help them protect their digital transactions. So we're really helping these banks and fintechs to mitigate all the fraud that they've been hitting or that they've been hit with, especially because we're seeing more and more sophisticated fraud attacks. And we do that through one platform that allows us to authenticate and secure customers as well as transactions. So on the customer side, on the digital banking side, we protect the front door, logging into your mobile online banking, doing the transactions or adding a beneficiary. And then on the payment side, we're talking about protecting 3D secure, non-card present e-commerce transactions. And we do that through the whole the three domains of 3D secure.
Okay, now you talked about banks and fintechs there. Why is it so important that they invest in modern tech infrastructures? And I guess what happens if they don't?
I think the question is like the importance of modern infrastructure. If you have that in place, then that allows you to do as a bank and as a fintech what you need to do and what you want to do. And also because I'm looking at this from a fraud fighting perspective. Also, modern infrastructure is like the backbone of being able to compete with these fraudsters who are using very, very modern technology and sophisticated attacks.
It's hard to keep up with them, isn't it?
It is really hard to keep up. And what we see a lot when we talk to our customers, that banks these days is still very much siloed. So we have a couple of customers where we serve them on both, like the customer, the digital banking and the payments, and we speak with different teams. So there's the digital banking team and then there's the payment team. But they're solving, in the interaction with Entersekt, they're solving for the same problem. Solving fraud, reducing fraud, while enhancing the customer experience at the same time. But it's mind-boggling for us that they don't work together. And then also you're missing a lot of data points, because when we're talking about fraud and fighting fraud and creating a modern banking experience that is part of, it's also the risk signals that you're collecting and that we can curate and enrich and analyze them to, on the one hand, create a great experience for the end users while keeping them safe.
Sure. Now, you spoke there about the tech infrastructure, but what would you say are the most important areas within that structure to prioritize to deliver reliable, uninterrupted digital and mobile experiences?
So when I look at it, it's two things really that for me come to mind. One is leveraging risk-based analytics, leveraging data. Also, of course, throwing AI tools into that to help you with that.
Yeah.
And then to that end, we collect, we enrich, we analyze a lot of data, hundreds of data points from one single transaction. That could be the user behavior, how you hold your phone, how you type. It's very unique.
Wow. Yeah.
Sometimes so you can fake maybe a fingerprint, but some of the behavioral analytics, like even how you walk, you can't. It's very difficult to fake.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
You can really see, like, did you just try to take over that account, or are you really who you say you are? Also, location plays a role. If I'm initiating a transaction from one part of the world, but the authentication comes from a location which is very far away, we can also look into that. And we're also leveraging third-party tools in that. And then the other thing is, when you have a transaction and you a few risk flags went up, the risk score is higher, what do you do then? And then this is where the other technology comes in that is very important in the digital banking and payments experience, is then the authentication. So how do you then step up a transaction to ask the end user, okay, can you please authenticate yourself? And we're not talking about SMS or OTP, that's hopefully a thing of the past. We're talking about classic push authentication, but also we can use silent authentication. Authentication doesn't necessarily mean you interrupt someone in their payment flow, because that's what we're trying to reduce to increase the customer experience. So you can also use something that we call a browser ID, which is a unique attribute that we can assign to like an online banking user. We can also leverage passkeys and FIDO, that is like the FIDO technology to that end.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I guess from a consumer perspective, a lot of this stuff is going on without you even knowing it. Is that fair?
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's the trick. That's the trick. That's like this elusive balance that you need to get right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the underlying, like almost fundamental to everything that you then add on top in the digital banking experience. What is maybe from a digital banking perspective considered a core service. But if there's fraud, if customers are not feeling safe using your product, or they're feeling it's too much hassle to actually get one transaction through, then you can have the best products, but you're spoiling the experience there.
Now, we're asking all our guests at Pay360 here what they consider to be the next big leaps in digital and mobile banking. What are your thoughts on that, and how those changes might affect the UK financial ecosystem?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because
we're just going to throw it out there.
I don't have a crystal ball.
That's a shame. Yeah.
But what we're really hoping to see is that there's more collaboration between banks and technology providers, because also what we see a lot is that banks and fintechs try to solve for everything themselves, including maybe some of these topics that I mentioned earlier, but then lose focus on really like what is the core product, because the end consumer doesn't care so much about the risk mitigation that happens in the background, while it's very, very important. And then if the industry is working well together, we are hoping to see that there's more efficiency in general, and also in fighting fraud. And I think it's especially in the UK. I think account-to-account payment is increasing. And I heard someone here saying today that this is going to be predicted to unlock 9 billion in economic growth.
Wow.
Account-to-account payment.
Yeah.
Guess where the fraud is going to go?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Straight for that.
Yeah.
Well, we'll definitely keep an eye on that. Melanie, Ockerse, thank you so much for joining me here at Pay360.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Joining me now is Peter Harmston, who is Partner Head of Payments Consulting at KPMG. Peter, how are you today?
Great, thanks, Graham. Having a great day and enjoying the vibe here at Pay360.
Yeah, there is a good vibe here, isn't there? Yeah, there's a lot of footfall and there's a lot going on. So And let's talk about maybe some of the key themes of the event, and certainly the national payments vision is one of those. What do you see as some of the implications of that vision?
Yeah, and thanks, Graham. I mean, I've already been to a couple of sessions this morning, and they've already focused. If I had £1 for every time someone mentioned the National Payments Vision already, by 11 o'clock on day one, I'd be a rich man.
Yeah.
But no, it's been, I think, for banks and fintech, we're a real turning point with the MPV. I think the UK as a whole has had some challenges, shall we say, over the last 5 years. Have probably been overtaken by some other countries. And I think finally the National Payments Vision gives us some hope as well, to have a single clear direction and strategy that everyone can get behind, including the regulators being quite joined up. So I think that's really positive. I think a couple of key bits where people can really think about investment and what's going to really drive change. I think the first thing is about the real drive in the MPV to have an alternative to cards. So when we're sitting there and we're paying either on e-com or point of sale in a shop, do we need to have, or should we have, a real viable alternative to cards? And I think that's, and whether that be open banking or not, is a TBC. But I think that's going to give the banks and fintechs a real chance to innovate in that area, which I think it makes it more exciting for the country for actually do something a bit different. I think the second part, which is, again, getting talked about a lot, but really important, is fraud. So we've been through a journey on fraud, we've got the reimbursement scheme, but finally, the MPV is positioning as a position where it's not just being a financial services problem, and actually the industry to start working together with the social media companies, with telcos, which we've seen countries like Australia have a fantastic success about sharing data, which I think is really interesting. Again, it will allow fintechs and banks to invest and actually think about working in the wider ecosystem. And I think the last bit I'll touch on, because it doesn't get talked about as much on the MPV, is there was a bit coy about it, but Bitcoin or central bank digital currencies did get talked about. So it's not dead yet, and I think it gave everyone a bit of hope going, actually, it's, the wording was around we're still investigating, we're in the design phase, etc. But I think for those who play in that space, see this as actually that the UK may continue to invest in a Bitcoin or central bank digital currency, be that retail, the use case looking at now, but all from a wholesale perspective. But again, I think that's quite an interesting place. So we're not going, no, we're not doing it. So I know a number of fintechs who want to play or are playing that space in other countries, which makes it quite exciting.
Yeah. Now, clearly, banks, financial institutions need to invest in modern technology infrastructures. Why is that so crucial today? I mean, you've alluded to some of it in terms of Bitcoin and all the rest of it, but why is that so crucial?
I think there's a few parts to that, Graham. I think there's an expectation to start off with about why do we need to invest? We need to invest because it's the cost of doing business. Customers expect us to invest. Because if I am Joe Bloggs on the street, I expect my banking services, the fintechs I work with, the insurance companies, whoever it might be, to be secure, resilient, look after my data, and have trust in them. So you have to, I'm not saying that it always goes hand in hand, but actually if you're investing in technology, that's going to be a lot of your key focus. The second part is a competitive landscape. I wouldn't say it's fear of missing out, but there's a number of challenger banks, neobanks, fintechs who are investing heavily in technology. So everybody's got to keep up with that. Everybody's got to keep investing, making sure they are not being leapfrogged by their competitors. And I suppose the last bit of why we've got to continue investing is the joys of the regulator. And we've seen it over the last couple of months. There's been a couple of outages, shall we say. Some of them have been more public than others. The Treasury Committee's been quite clear and quite quickly reactive to wanting to understand why and get data. So it's expectations that banks, fintechs, PSPs, the whole ecosystem of payments must continue to invest in technology. And interestingly, KPMG recently did a payments modernization survey across the globe. So 1,000 banks, different countries, etc. And there's a lot of detail behind it, but ultimately it tells you that everybody, 94% or whatever it might be, of financial institutions are investing in their payments technology because they have to. It's not a choice anymore.
And what are they invested in? What would be, the top 3 areas that they need to be investing in your opinion?
I think there's some parts here around more hygiene factors. slightly, I said, the not so glamorous part, but so important. So security and trust. So this goes back to the point of resilience, goes back to the point that actually to have a hygiene factor of you have to continue to invest that. So that's number one. That is, it could be along with moving to the cloud, it could be with active sites, there's lots of things. So that is a big part of the portfolio.
Yeah.
But I think on the more interesting parts where people are starting to invest in, because we know in payments and in kind of consumer banking, some of the products are, how do we say this nicely, some homogenous in some ways. So what's going to make it different? What are some of those new banks and new innovators doing? So we've got to invest, and there is investment more in personalization. How do we how do we really make it, when I'm logging on, as a consumer or as a corporate or as a government client, how am I logging on and making that experience personal to me every time? Because everybody can make a payment, everybody can do their cash management, everybody can use virtual accounts, which is all very interesting. But the next leap for that, which is investment, is around personalization. And kind of the last bit linking to that is, and it gets talked about a lot, and we're starting to crack the nut on it, is the use of data. So, is data water, is data new oil? There's lots of different people talking about different things. But it truly is what's really going to make the difference in products and services going forward, which links to that personalization thing. But how are we investing in data lakes? How are we investing in analytical skills? How are we partnering between banks and fintechs to be able to use this data? We've got the joys of ISO 20022 live in many different clearing streams. So bringing it all together and actually either commercializing it or making better outcomes for your customers is super important.
You mentioned the next big leap there, so let's finish on that point. What do you see to be the next big leap in digital and mobile banking if we gaze into our crystal ball here today?
Luckily, I did bring my crystal ball. It's quite heavy on the Elizabeth line this morning, and people looked at me a bit strangely. But there's a few bits. Again, I've purposely not talked about AI a little bit now, because I'm sure you get lots of interviews who want to talk about AI. But there's a couple of bits I think are actually going to be the next big parts. I won't say a leap, but a movement. I think the first thing is about embedded payments or embedded banking or embedded finance, where, again, we talked about the homogenous products we have, we talked about logging onto our online apps, making payments. But actually, where does it all just become ubiquity in everything we do? We all know what embedded payments are and how that's embedded to how payments and banking is embedded into non-financial products. And that is the next leap, where it's just in everything we do, whether I'm driving my car and I'm paying for my insurance at the same time, or I'm walking up to my fridge and it's ordering food for me. I'm not actually logging onto my banking and doing that, but it's all embedded into that. I think the next kind of leap, or really progression, is about the wallet. We're big users of wallets over here, many other countries are, particularly dominated by a particularly couple of big players that is then backed off by certain very dominant payment schemes underneath that. But actually, is that going to change? How do we move the wallet onto the next evolution where there's competition in the market? It's not necessarily dominated by the banks and by some of the large social media companies. And how does that potentially evolve into a super app, etc.? Been to Beijing recently, and there's you can't go anywhere. Spend time in Asia. You can't go anywhere without using a super app. Us in Europe, in our payments experiences and our banking experiences, aren't embedded into that. So is that a global leap? No. But is it a leap where I think the UK and Europe might go? Then most possibly going.
Yeah. Listen, you've given us a lot of food for thought today on the podcast. Peter Harmston, thank you very much.
Thanks, Graham.
I'm here with Ian Povey, who is the CIO Payments Technology at NatWest. Ian, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Yeah, great to see you here at Pay360. Now, you are going to be very busy tomorrow, aren't you? Because you're speaking on the C-suite panel, no less. So no pressure there. And that's all about changes the industry might see in the next 24 months. So I guess the obvious question is, what are some of those changes?
Well, we have to polish our crystal ball for that one,
Absolutely,
don't we? So,
yeah.
Might need a bit of tuning, but it's such a dynamic market. So for me, it's really going to be three themes that I'm trying to convey. One is around how we need to lift our focus away from just looking at the infrastructure, the rails of payments, and actually look at what is the value to customers and what are customers really after, and then pulling that rebuild of the from a regulatory and infrastructure level for customers to actually get a better experience. Number two is really linked to that a little bit, but it's more about that more global interlinking of schemes around the world, and that's going to enhance the speed of payments. It's going to look at the transparency of them as well, particularly looking at cross-border into domestic schemes and vice versa. So which is part of a G20 objective as well at a global level, but it's equally relevant at the domestic level. And I couldn't say anything without adding AI and a little bit on quantum as well, but AI is clearly the big focus that we need to really embrace over the next 24 months.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, well, let's keep on the area of technology then. So, what are some of the areas that you think, the banks, the financial institutions should be prioritising?
I always start with a question like that of what's driving change, and therefore, if you look at your underlying architecture and the technologies that support that, what do we really need? And we get fixated in things like standards and so on, but really when you look at the payments industry, we're talking about velocity, i.e. speed. We're talking about 24/7 and every millisecond thereof. And when you bring in that context, particularly with the digital channels, because I can be anywhere in the world at any time of the day, I'm going to be able to expect my money, either whether I'm moving it, storing it, or lending it, is available at that point in time. So the technology areas of focus have to be in our cores. So looking at the core banking, being more real time, being able to respond to solutions like transaction level clearing and settlement, which we have in Australia, through to the data side, because yes, standards are driving an incredible data payload. How do we get the value from that data? How do we make sure it's in the right place at the right time, but also is maintaining its integrity throughout those journeys? And that's a big focus for everybody. It has to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's fascinating looking at it from a global scale as well, isn't it? Just to see how far advanced certain countries are against others, what kind of local payment systems are in place. So, again, a bit more crystal ball gazing, I guess.
Yeah.
What do you see as the next big leap in mobile and digital banking? I mean, that's quite a big question, but any particular areas you'd like to focus on?
Again, with that one, I would have to bring in the AI dimension.
Of course.
And it's unfortunate that when you have different conferences and events, there's a topic that is the one du jour. And you sort of think, you look back over a couple of years and say, did it actually change? And things like AI have been around for years, decades actually. So we need to put that into context and going, well, if it's been invented 50, 60 years ago, but we're only now sort of talking about it every other moment.
Is that the key? It's the acceleration in the last few years. Is the key.
And it's finding the use cases that actually make sense, but then you've got to bring into that the governance of it, ensuring again that it's drawing on integral data that you can validate. Also has the operational resilience, because if your services are heavily reliant and the tools are not available, then how are you going to function? But if I take an example of Wise, I do Wise payments to Australia all the time. Probably shouldn't be saying that because we're probably an advertising company, but my point being here is a fintech layer that's looking at a customer experience and convenience. But at the moment I have to go through an app, and then I go through multiple apps part of that journey. What if they just used an AI tool and I got a WhatsApp call and I was just able to say yes in response and my transfer is done? These are the types of thinkings that could evolve over time.
And I guess it's that balance, isn't it? It's that classic balance. Again, one of the big talking points between having that seamless experience, but also the fraud prevention side as well. That it's it's not too easy, and it's not too easy for the fraudsters.
And we always talk about keeping friction in the model for that exact reason. But again, the tools are getting faster even for that, so that that friction can get shorter and shorter over time.
So you almost you don't see that the friction is happening even though it's present. Absolutely. So given all of that, how do you see NatWest's strategy maybe evolving over the next 18 months? What are going to be some of your priorities?
It's a good, timely question, and I say that in the context of winning with customers. That is a absolute focus, and they shifting the lens. We're always focusing on customer and experience, but that is a real focus right now. And what that does, particularly in technology areas, is reinforce that we need to be closer to the experience and understanding what we do and what that drives at the front end, and equally what the customer's activity does and drives at the back end. So that's a real focus as we move in going forward. And part of the I guess the strapline activity you'll hear more of as well is around how we turn possibilities into progress. And that's so relevant in an ever-changing world. And change is constant. It's a constant that we cannot avoid. We just need to learn how to influence and steer that change as opposed to just being consumed by it.
Yeah, of harnessing all the potential and the technology and all the rest of it. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, fascinating stuff. Ian Povey, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Henry.
Okay, joining me now is Melinda Roylett, who is Managing Director, Merchant Services at Lloyds Banking Group. Melinda, lovely to see you here at Pay360.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here at Pay360.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'd love to get your thoughts on all things payments. So let's start with that. How have you seen the payments landscape evolve in recent years? And I guess, how does Lloyds Merchant Services fit into that?
Yeah, well, thank you. And so the big trends that I've seen in the last few years of my career, I think firstly I'd say is omnichannel payments. I think before, pretty much everyone paid in stores, and obviously with the growth of online and e-commerce, merchants need the ability to be able to sell things online and, in person. And so having technology and solutions that enable them to do that is really important. So that's a big trend. The second is really around what we call in the banking world embedded finance, or other people might call buy now pay later, or buy now pay later. And so how that's distributed and the increasing reach of those type of products. I saw a lot of that, like the growth in that segment. When I was at ClearPay and when I was at PayPal, the original, I guess, embedded finance provider, and at Lloyds, we're actually building our own buy now, pay later finance solution, which is Black Horse Flex Pay. So that's really exciting. And the third one is really around small businesses, and the increasing choice that they have for payment solutions in the market. I think beginning of my career, if you wanted a payments processing solution as a small merchant, you had to sign up for long contract, and you were tied in. There was the pricing that is quite complicated, but we've seen a massive simplification and expansion of solutions to that segment of merchants.
Yeah. Well, let's keep on that topic actually, because obviously there's a lot of economic uncertainty around at the moment, isn't there? So how do you specifically help SMEs then? Particularly when I'm thinking with shifting consumer habits.
Yeah, no, it's pretty tough at the moment to be a small business. I mean, a business of any size, right? Yeah. We got inflation and, geopolitical uncertainty and, changing immigration regulations.
There's a lot going on,
Yeah, and so I think first and foremost, what we provide for our merchants is just payments, payments done really well, high quality, integrated into the software providers that the merchants use, high uptime, reliable, UK call center. If a merchant has a problem, they can just call us. And so I think that's probably the most important thing, just keeping the lights on of a business. I think the other really great thing that we offer that a lot of merchants are using at the moment is our merchant cash advance product. And so this allows merchants to be able to get financing if they need another store or some capital investment, and then to repay back the loan as their earnings come in. So it's a percentage of their cash that they settle with us through their card acquiring. So it's just a really flexible solution that meets the merchant need for more money when they need it most for their business. So I think those are probably the two things that we're doing to help small businesses. Okay,
sounds good. Now let's talk about payment innovation, something that Lloyds have always been kind of associated with. What kind of new technologies, trends are you particularly excited about at the moment?
Yeah, well, omnichannel is obviously a very key one. Helping our merchants, navigate that, landscape is very important. We just won an award, which I'm super proud of, for our omnichannel solution at MPE in Berlin.
Oh, cool.
Helping merchants with that is a really big focus. The other innovation that we're really focused on is embedded finance, and helping merchants provide financing to their consumers. Consumers are finding it tough as well. And so if they want to buy larger purchases, how do they split those purchases, over, if it's 3 months or, up to 2 years. And so the product that we're building, Black Horse Flex Pay, allows for our customers to be able to do that. So I think they're two really big ways that Lloyds is leading on innovation.
Just looking ahead then, let's do a bit of future gazing. What do you see as some of the biggest challenges and opportunities in the payments industry?
Well, I think the payments industry is heavily influenced by consumers and what consumer trends are happening. And so obviously we have to mention AI. I mean, that's just becoming more and more prevalent in our lives every day. And how does the payments industry respond to that as both a threat and opportunity? I think is really important. I think another thing is personalization and how do we help merchants link transactions and consumer data. So probably seen some of the trials that Amazon have been doing. You walk into stores and you can walk out again without payments being invisible. And I think there's more more of that type of technology coming where payments become increasingly frictionless. But that's really determined on marrying that consumer and payments profile, and so there's a lot of work being done on that, which is really exciting.
Yeah, well, there's almost not a checkout at all, isn't it? Yeah, you just you've got your goods and you're at home.
I'm not sure that'd be good for my bank balance.
Yeah, I'm not shoplifting, honestly. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Melinda Roylett, thanks so much for sharing your insights with us on the podcast.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Okay, I'm now here with David Abbott, who is the VP Payments and Strategic Accounts at Tuum. David, how are you today?
Very well. Great to see you.
Thank you for joining us on the podcast. So, let's start with an intro to Tuum. Who are you and what problems are you trying to solve?
Tuum are a fourth generation core banking service provider. We are very focused on literally delivering the core bank. We have an accounts module, lending module, a payments module, and a lending module. So we're able to focus really on that part of the bank's operations and allow them to source the rest of their services elsewhere.
Okay. Now, what we're talking about a lot on this podcast today and all the interviews is the kind of technology aspects or initiatives that banks, financial institutions need to put in place to enhance their digital experiences. So what are your opinions on what they should be prioritising?
Well, you start off really with the fact that many banks are on legacy platforms, legacy systems, so they're not necessarily speaking APIs naturally, they're not necessarily speaking the new ISO standards naturally. So moving on to a fully API-enabled platform with better user interfaces and also supporting ISO 20022 as a natural part of what they do will be a big consideration when it comes to creating the data enrichment that is necessary to create a really hyper-customized consumer experience, which is what I think banks are going to be looking for in the future.
And give us some insight about how practically you work with banks, because you help them with their digitalization. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, primarily, we'd probably come to a bank with an answer to one of three questions. The bank will come to us with a problem that needs to be solved, a new opportunity that they wish to explore, or a new market that they wish to enter. And we can help very quickly with any one of those, and we can do that via a proof of concept, which again, bear in mind that it's all OEM. We are the controlling and governing factor in all of our software. We deliver any of those things quickly. The client can then choose how to take that forwards and then evolve off that into a much broader acceptance of our platform.
And of course, a big talking point at this event and every event we go to is AI. So how do you see AI helping in that scenario?
Again, I think if you look at legacy systems and legacy platforms, very hard to integrate these more modern systems. We have a platform which is open to hyper customization. Our system is built on a low-code platform, so the ability for the end user to actually modify the platform and allow AI decisions to feed back into the core is actually part of what we do.
Help us out with some future gazing. You seem to be well placed to give us your insights into what might be coming next. What do you see as maybe the next big leap in digital banking? What are you keeping your eyes on?
Again, I think wallets are a rapidly emerging customer interface, and a wallet needs to be able to handle all banking interfaces. All banking services need to come through that front end. At the moment, you look at a lot of banks and they will have their cards solution in one box and their core banking or their lending or their mortgages or even Sharia banking, for example, in separate boxes. And bringing those together is a complex problem. I think in terms of the future, I see the harmonization of debit cards, credit cards, lending, the deposit account, etc., all coming under one roof. And that, I think, is one of the evolutions that I see happening. And again, I think RPA, in addition to AI, robotic process automation is also going to help bring costs down. At the moment, I think banks are carrying a fairly heavy cost overhead with complex systems, and streamlining and simplification is going to be the way forward.
And in terms of that centralisation that you speak about, what are going to be the benefits to the banks themselves and to their end customers?
Agility, I would suggest, is probably the major change. The ability to have customer-based pricing. You've got 4 or 5 products with me, I'm going to give you a much better price than I'd give to a customer who has 1 product, and then that will enable me to actually attract more business, retain you better, and give you a much better customer experience.
Absolutely. Okay, well, David Abbott, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you very much. Been a pleasure.
Well, that's all from Pay360. Thanks again to all my guests who took the time to chat to me, and of course to our partners at BPC. Don't forget, if you've enjoyed the show, please do give us a positive rating and review on your usual podcast app. And if you want to get in touch with us, you can use the contact form at csuitepodcast.com, and you can also find me, Graham Barrett, on LinkedIn. But for now, thanks for listening and goodbye.